everyone. This is Varun Agarwal, Senior Associate Editor at ETCIO, and I welcome you all to today's webinar brought to you by ETCIO in partnership with Coursera. Today we are talking about adapting to the accelerated demand for data and cloud in post-COVID world. 2020 has redefined the way we work, collaborate, and learn on the job. Enterprises are required to focus on streamlining their workforce, rethink operational infrastructure, and adapt to remote and blended models. According to a recent survey, as a result of the spread of the pandemic, 64% of organizations in India are expected to increase demand for cloud computing, while 56% for cloud software to support the new normal. Tech leaders across the globe are facing these new challenges with changed infrastructure and talent needs amid rescoping for a cloud-first strategy. Understanding the urgency of reskilling the workforce to achieve the business goals in the post-COVID world, in today's discussion, we listen in from Google and Coursera about the importance of being a cloud-first organization by building an internal talent pipeline. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel of speakers for the day. Our first speaker of the day is Raghav Gupta, who is the Managing Director, India and APAC for Coursera. Welcome, Raghav.
Hi, Varun.
Hi. Our next speaker of the day is Rochna Gulani, who's the Managing Director, Learning Services for Google Cloud. Welcome, Rochna.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. And finally, we also have Ruchira Sharma, who's the Head Skills Transformation APAC at Coursera. Welcome, Ruchira.
Thank you, Varun, and thank you all of you for your time today.
Now, before we begin, I would like to request all attendees to feel free to post their questions to our speakers in the Q&A window. We'll take them up post the roundtable discussion. Now, let me start this discussion with Raghav. Raghav, Coursera being a learning platform, you have a unique observer's view on the impact of COVID-19 among global enterprises. So what are the key trends that you've observed in the industry in the context of changing business environment?
Yeah, thanks, Varun. That's a great, I would say, starting point for us to start this conversation. And maybe before I share some Coursera insights, I'll paint a slightly wider picture as well, right? And these are, to say the least, interesting times. The World Economic Forum, as a part of their jobs of 2020 and beyond report, has been talking about what is called the double disruption on businesses around the world. And when they talk about double disruption, they're talking about automation, which was already happening even pre-COVID, and then the impact of COVID. And these two together are causing significant disruption in businesses around the world. Firstly, jobs were getting displaced even pre-COVID. That has accelerated post-COVID because of technology adoption. Second, core skills as a part of the fourth industrial revolution were always changing already. And again, that has got accelerated because of COVID. Interestingly, a very large percentage of workforce will operate remotely even after we go back to normal, even after the vaccines are here. And that is, of course, driven by COVID. So this whole work from home phenomena will continue even post-COVID. And then we are seeing that the number of businesses that are adopting digital and are adopting cloud is accelerating. And so this double disruption around the world on businesses is very significant. And like I said, this is changing the kind of skills that employees need as well. And let me talk a little bit from a Coursera data insight as well as to what we are seeing. So firstly, over the last year, this year, we've been looking at how people are building skills on our platform. And in 2019, we looked at skill development on our platform. And, for various reasons, we classified this as people who are currently employed. What skills are they building? And those people who are not employed, what skills are they building? And we found that most people were building skills related to their work, related to jobs of the future. So these were skills in, business, in technology, in data science, in emerging technologies and topics like that. And there was a pretty good match between unemployed and employed people. We did this study this year as well, and there's not been too much of a change for people who are unemployed. They continue to look for employment by building skills in business, technology, and data science. But we found that employed people, along with building functional skills, are building skills in areas like mindfulness, gratitude, kindness, listening, and so on. And what it's telling us is that in this stressful time, along with building functional skills, employees in companies are looking at building human skills, are building resilience, and so on and so forth. And in our messaging to industry leaders, to learning leaders, we've been saying, let's focus on both, the functional skills as well as human skills as well. The last point I will add here, and maybe I'll close with that in terms of my opening remarks, is we've always had a lot of knowledge building and skill building that happens on the Coursera platform. But over the last 5 months or so, we've seen this deep hunger for hands-on learning as well. And we found that if we can bring a combination of courses and projects on our platform, we are seeing massive adoption. And this is happening across domains, across digitization, across cloud on the Coursera platform. And hopefully through the course of this conversation, I'll have opportunity to share a little bit more insights around this particular topic. But with that, let me hand back to you, Varun.
Thanks, Raghav. That was quite insightful. I mean, no one would expect the kind of skills that are suddenly in demand. And I think to Raghav's point about double disruption, Rosna, I wanted to talk to you about your experiences with your customers. Now, given when COVID-19 hit different enterprises, once already on cloud had a clear advantage in keeping their businesses running as usual. Now, how were some of your customers impacted in early days of COVID, and what kind of trends have you seen in the markets, maybe in India and beyond?
Yeah, thank you, Varun. First, I want to acknowledge and just say that the double disruption idea really resonates with what Raghav was saying. But what I'd like to start off by saying is that for a number of years now, customers have realized that moving to the cloud gives them the edge in innovation, gives them the edge in reach with their customers, and gives them potentially with cost benefits as well, that they're able to innovate faster in the cloud. When COVID hit, what we saw was the first few months looked a little bit like panic, right? Like no one knew what was going on. If you think about early 2020, everything seemed like we didn't know how to reach our customers. We didn't know how we were dealing with our own employees. And everyone was trying to figure out how is our business continuity going to happen. So I felt like there was a lot of time that customers were spending on focusing on the now, which was about business continuity. There was already research that said that data that 45% of IT spending would go into cloud in the next 2 or 3 years. But what we saw is that when that panic sort of got over and people got, maybe because of the resilience training that everybody was doing, or maybe just because of how humans adapt to situations, that in the next few months, what we saw is tremendous innovation and acceleration to cloud. And what I mean by that is that, exactly like you said, customers who are already in cloud were using more of cloud. Customers who were not in cloud were approaching us to figure out how to do this faster because they needed to find a new way to reach their customers, right? So enterprise customers were finding ways to reach their customers. And so you saw a lot of innovation in how work happens. You also saw a lot of innovation in what work happens, right? So let me quote some examples to say, I'll start both internally and externally with what we saw with our customers. Internally, if you think about our own in Google Cloud, how cloud salespeople was selling changed, how professional services was delivering services changed. So yes, they needed to still know how to deploy cloud, but they also needed to know how to do that remotely. So back to the idea of, yes, you needed technical skills, but you also needed some new functional skills, which were not functional, but like would change the way you work, which was very important, right? What we also saw with our customers is that you take a customer like in London, Revolut, which moved to cloud because it was now able to reach 12 million people who needed to handle their money online. Or a company like ShareChat in India, which migrated to cloud in an effort to save costs and be able to innovate quickly. So we definitely saw a lot of trends like that, where I would say the word that resonated the most with me was innovation and acceleration, right? Everyone said we needed to do this faster. So if I look back at what's happening in cloud and my own learning space, we've had one of the best years when it comes to looking at learning, because just even in Coursera, we've had like a 500% increase in enrollment, because there's a human aspect to which people do need to learn, and learning reduces stress, so why not, right? So there was that, plus there was the need to be able to operate in your business faster and in a new way.
So, Roshna, that's an interesting point that you made around people just jumping onto the cloud. Now, the important question is, before you move to the cloud, enterprises actually need to assess their cloud readiness. So, what kind of infrastructure and human capital needs would you recommend that needs to be in place before one even starts planning a migration to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like how you put technology and human capital all together. And that is at the heart of what happens when you have a technology transformation or a digital transformation happen. When we think of what happens in digital transformation, technology obviously is at the heart of it, right? Like, you are adopting something new, there is a new piece of innovation that needs to happen. Process is an important aspect, right? How you deploy, how you procure, how you build, how you design, all of that changes. And so process is an important component. But at the heart of all of this is the people who are actually going to do it all, right? So in Google, we think of the way one does this digital transformation is in those three parts. It's about the people, it's about the process, and it's about technology. And for us in learning, we are definitely focused on the people aspect of all of this, because we say every technology transformation starts with the talent transformation. So we have to first focus on the skills of the people, because if you look at stats, 90% of enterprise customers still say that the number one reason they will not be able to accelerate their digital transformation is because they don't have the right skills. And think about that. It's not about cost. It's not about security. It's not about, not having the cloud infrastructure that they need. It is about not having people with the right skills to be able to do that. So technology innovation is happening faster than people's ability to adopt all of these skills and changes that is happening. So I think that there is a opportunity for us here to like think about that human capital and start with that as leaders before we go into that. I'd like to add in that as leaders, one of the most important thing that you could do is, when adopting to cloud, because it is not just about the functional skills, it is about a new way of thinking, right? It's about how you innovate in the cloud that has to be different. And if you just did what you did on-prem onto the cloud, you're not truly using or leveraging the potential of cloud. So people have to think in a new way of what else is possible. I mean, if you really think about all these digital trends that we are seeing, whether it is with social media, online shopping, anything else, you couldn't have thought about all of those and the scale of those things without cloud, right? It's almost like technology is infinite now, or infrastructure is infinite now. And that infinity mindset is what allows people to innovate. So as leaders who are thinking about your teams, I would say that one of the biggest things you could think about is how to drive cloud mindshare. And you do that through skills development. So your human capital is the biggest asset you have in moving to the cloud. Because once you do that, they will help you adopt technology. They will help you fix the processes. So to me, that's the most important aspect of digital transformation is first people, process, and technology.
I think that is one point that a lot of organizations end up missing. They would look for funds, they look for the physical resources rather than actually focusing first on retraining. Because, like you said, even if you have everything, it's all waste unless you have people trained on it. So
Yeah.
let me quickly, bring in Ruchira here. So Ruchira, we are talking about scale. companies like Google and a lot of Indian companies now have thousands and thousands of people working for them. And when it comes to retraining, it becomes quite a massive task. So, what are some of the things that you would suggest to keep in mind when training these tens of thousands of employees on the cloud? And how can enterprises look at upskilling their workforce to drive cloud literacy across organizations?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Varun, and thank you also to Raghav and Rochna for setting the stage. As I talk about, this topic, allow me to please share my screen and take you through a couple of slides. Yeah, so thank you for that question, Varun, and allow me to quickly run through a couple of slides just to demonstrate how we at Coursera think about cloud readiness from a skills perspective. So as we were discussing, digital transformation is the need of the hour. However, like Rochna said, this also requires a cultivation of the right skills throughout the organization. And our experience of working with companies also tells us that one does need to build a very well-rounded deep skilling strategy for the entire company. A strategy that has three important components as depicted on this slide, and allow me to build that bottom up. But firstly, everybody in the organization needs to have a basic literacy and understanding of the different aspects of the cloud migration so that they can take the full advantage of the cloud benefits. This means that every team that is going to be using the cloud needs to go through a literacy oriented skilling program. Secondly, when it comes to digital transformation skilling, one size fit all does not work, which means that a role based skilling needs to be implemented. Which means that the skilling pathway for your learners should be personalized to the function they serve within the company. And finally, and we will deconstruct this in the discussion as we go along, but finally, the companies need to invest in innovative use cases like artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics, etc. And they need to be able to reskill their existing workforce in some of these emerging technologies as well. It is our experience that when organizations have invested in deep skilling within their organizations, within their companies, they have fully realized the benefits of their digital transformation and their cloud migration initiatives. So, to begin this deep skilling exercise, we suggest that the company should begin by assessing the state of its current skills and take a really dispassionate look at the existing state of skills within the organization. Once that is done, they should proceed to set a goal and define the vision for where they would like to reach with regards to the different capabilities within the company and the kind of proficiency that they would like to build within the company. And it's really important to clearly articulate all your IT, all your business goals, which means that you have to create a very well-defined set of outcome-oriented aspirations for your short term and for your long term, and then start working backwards to be able to build those capabilities. Next, we find that the ability to use data to analyze the competencies and the skills within the company can be a key differentiator. And this analysis also then helps you to find the right talent pools within the company and then make related hiring decisions. So to demonstrate, you will see this graph on the screen, for instance, which quantifies the number of people in a particular company by their skills and proficiency. And so, for instance, in this company, we find that they have 20 people with an advanced level proficiency in security engineering, and a number that they might want to work towards increasing if they are serious about migrating to the cloud at scale. Um, it is also important that there be a thoughtful evaluation of the company's current capabilities and maturity when compared to their peers in the industry. So for instance, this company whose example we are taking, as is cited on the graph, excels when it comes to security engineering or machine learning, but is failing behind on databases, on DevOps, on architecture, and therefore is an area that they need to be mindful of building within. And finally, we recommend that organizations must not approach digital transformation as a one-time effort, but rather think of it as an ongoing business discipline, and make sure to track your progress over time, as this chart demonstrates, and keep making necessary interventions wherever required to make sure you're on the right path. Back to you, Varun.
Thanks, Ruchira. I think that was an important point that it can't be like a one-time effort. You have to continuous learning. Like we always say that uh, we are all students for life, right? So we shouldn't forget that even in our organization. Now, segueing into another area of training, Rosha, want to understand that typically learning and development have been an HR domain, right? So if you look at the cloud, it brings about a paradigm shift in learning requirements. So do you think apart from HR, even IT, finance, and other business functions should also be looking at reskilling for the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to first pick up on your learning as a continuum motion first, and then build up on this answer. When learning is cultural in an organization, everyone learns, right? And everyone learns on an ongoing basis versus saying, I'm skilled up on cloud. As we just said, there is no such thing as skilled up on cloud, because cloud yesterday is not cloud today. Like, there's constant innovation happening. And what this is doing is that it is changing the roles of people around, right? Like 10 years ago, you didn't know what DevOps was, right? Like, there was no such thing as a DevOps engineer, or maybe like there were 3 companies who knew something about DevOps engineering. So roles are evolving. There was no such thing as a data engineer. People knew data scientists, people knew data analysts, but people didn't know what a data engineer was. And today, we're spending so much energy to educating people on how data needs to be engineered and the infrastructure to bring data and analyze data. So it's really important that we are continuously looking for opportunities because of the innovation that has happened, and enterprises need to understand how to bring that back into their organizations to drive innovation. So just like the IT roles are changing, everyone around is changing as well. So if you were in finance, how you bill an invoice is changing. You worried a lot about CapEx before. You don't do that anymore now in the world of cloud. How you optimize your finances has changed, right? If you were a business decision maker, how you think about enabling your people has changed, but also how you're buying, how you are deciding for innovation budgets, right? Like those kinds, how your strategy is created around data has changed. And AI, as Ruchira was saying. So every business in the organization, back to the point that that Raghav made earlier, if you are a cloud first organization, your entire organization is moving to the cloud. It's not just IT that is moving to cloud. So you do have to think about enabling all your business users, your decision makers, your finance people, and really bring everyone to the at least the basic cloud literacy, so that they can all start thinking about how does this change my work and how I'm going to innovate and help IT do more of. So absolutely, this is not just an HR thing. If you're trying to drive a learning culture, every leader should be thinking about what does this mean to my team, and how am I going to make sure that we are being innovative and leveraging cloud to its full potential.
That's true. In fact, even the HR teams sometimes look at only the IT part of the deployment, how the IT team is trained to actually deploy it. But the end users who are actually using it sometimes uh, are not really well trained. So that's an important point, be it finance, HR, marketing, any function has to be trained on all the updated technologies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, IT is core to the business now, right? Like IT is not just something that sits or enables the business. It is the business, right? When you think about a lot of organizations now, they start off in IT and they are IT, right? Or what used to be called IT. Now that is the business. So we really
Right.
need to make sure that HR, legal, finance, everyone, right? Legal issues are different in cloud, right? Security has to be thought of differently. Privacy issues are different. So I just think that every part of the organization needs to have some basic cloud literacy, and then you have to think about how we innovate what we do with that base knowledge. So absolutely, every leader and every part of the organization is in that journey of cloud first.
Absolutely, and that even complicates the way you look at skills. So, Richard, to that point, I mean, when you have to look at training the organization in cloud, for example, traditional skill sets may not be enough because we are talking about different skills required in functional domain, the way processes are run can evolve. So, what are some of the essential skills that you think that enterprises need to focus on to be cloud-ready organizations?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Varun. And this is a question that we do get asked quite often. Allow me to share a few visuals to make the point about the skills that are essential for a cloud migration. So we were discussing how the journey needs to start from a skill perspective. But I go back to the basics and I quote this report from McKinsey that states that any large scale move to the cloud needs to be backed by new capabilities. It's not just a lifting and shifting of what you're doing onto the cloud, it's rethinking the way the entire company now operates. And so we find that in order to accomplish this seismic transformation in the operations of a company, the leaders must fundamentally rethink their people strategy. And the reason is because the skilling and hiring for these new emerging roles requires a wholly different approach. And we find that a successful deep skilling program includes these three building blocks of competencies. So we talk about technology skills, business skills, human skills. You will find a lot of this resonating with what Rochna had outlined previously. But what we find is that such a holistic skilling approach that encompasses all of these three competencies acts as a force multiplier within the digital transformation journey. And allow me to break this down and give you a very brief window into what we mean by each of these competencies. So to begin with, as we all know, so far the technology workforce in an enterprise is very well versed in their traditional IT framework. But most of that will need to be overhauled, reskilled, or upskilled to align with the cloud environment. And for most enterprises, this relates to a very deep skilling of the IT organization and the operating model in which they work. So you will require specialists who understand the compute, the storage, the network, database, security protocols in the cloud. So which means that your technical skilling should start with all of these different critical skills along the entire value chain that involves maybe designing to development to testing to deployment in the cloud. But more importantly, we find that business skills also tend to be a major determinant of success. And for example, to start with, an organization-wide buy-in for this humongous move to the cloud is the first thing that is needed upfront, which means that one needs to involve all the key stakeholders in this journey. One needs to build the necessary support within the organization for this move. It is important to recognize that any large scale migration, whether related to cloud or not, there will be a resistance to change, and one needs to be able to work with that and transform that to now support for yourself. There could be, peripheral issues that you'll have to bring into consideration, but it is important for you to address them head on. Secondly, we find that decision making really comes to the fore because IT leaders need to weigh the pros and cons of migrating each application, each data asset, which often requires extensive dialogues, whether it is with the external cloud service providers or with internal stakeholders in the company, and with so many considerations to be made, whether they are a financial assessment or a security assessment or a compliance assessment or a feasibility assessment. Decision making, which is backed by data, is a skill that is core. And in addition to this, we have an agile culture, change management, and a number of other skills that we believe are really important. What I do want to highlight here is that, like you see a number of course recommendations for some of these skills on the slide, Coursera also offers the opportunity to practice hands-on learning on these business skills with what are called our guided projects, that are really short duration projects where like you see this example on project management, one can gain hands-on learning on skills like project management. And so these could also come in handy as one is in the thick and thin of things. And finally, I cannot stress enough the criticality of human skills, because, as Roshna was saying, that a transition to cloud is really an organization-wide team effort. It's all about the people, and everybody gets involved, whether it's, like she said, the previously called IT team, which is now really core business team, or the finance team, or the compliance team. So which means that skills like communication and collaboration really come to the fore. And such transformational projects can sometimes stress test your internal team dynamics. So being able to clearly articulate and clearly communicate your concerns, your challenges, your internal issues becomes really important. Adaptability is really important to be able to keep up with the fast pace of change, as you transition, but also as you continue to want to derive the best out of the platforms that themselves are innovating at a very fast pace. And here again, we find that a number of hands-on learning projects in addition to the courses on Coursera could come in handy. And so, to help an organization realize the full value of the cloud and to combine all of these, what I call critical ingredients, Coursera has come up with launching a cloud academy. This is an approach that builds important organizational capabilities and prepares a business for a cloud transformation. And as you can see, this follows a three-tier approach. So you have the literacy layer, which is the bottom blue band on the figure, that is designed to inform everybody about the basics of cloud, that is designed to create an awareness of the power of cloud. And we believe this will immensely help you garner that support for the cloud migration that you might be looking for from the different quarters within your organization. Next, you see that, as we discussed, instead of providing a very standardized one-size-fits-all skilling for all the members in your organization, a company should help its employees learn through the lens of the specific job roles that they will be performing. And therefore, role-based learning journeys are a very effective tool to be able to dole out such skilling programs. And that is what you find in this middle pink layer here, where, for instance, we've demonstrated certain skilling programs for the security team or for the data team, and so on and so forth. And finally, the third layer on top, that provides reskilling programs to fill newer roles that you might think of creating in your organization, like a cloud security architect or a database architect, and so on. And so what I would like to conclude with saying is that fully embracing the cloud can have a significant upside to a company, but this also requires cultivating the right skills within the organization, and something for which you should start with a structured, enterprise-wide, and a role-based approach. Over to you, Varun.
Thanks, Ruchira. We're actually getting a lot of questions from the audience, so maybe we get to some of those questions. Request Raghav to switch on his camera so that he can also answer some questions. Okay. So actually, before we get to the audience question, I had one question which I also wanted to understand. So I noticed in Raghav's presentation that people who are employed are actually looking at more of softer skills than ever before, but people who are not employed are probably not so much aligned, even though that does fall into the critical skills requirement. So why do you think there is a gap? I mean, if you've done some sort of an analysis there.
Yeah, I can talk to that. And Varun, if I may, before I answer that question, I've been listening in as Ruchira and Rochna have been talking, and one thing stayed with me, and I just want to kind of call that out. I think, Rochna, you said that technology has become infinite. And so an infinity mindset is what leaders and organizations need to take. And I thought that was so fascinating. I just thought I'll play it back once again. Coming to your question, Varun, I think people who are employed have job security, right? They definitely have job security in today's environment. And the reason we did this employed versus unemployed survey is, like all of us know, there are many people who've lost jobs as well, right? So clearly, if you are employed, job security is lesser of a challenge on your mind, but you might be working long hours, you might be struggling to maintain a distinction between work and home. You might be office sick, as some people have been talking about, instead of being homesick and topics like that. And I think we've seen people actually rely on learning to go back to say, let me build the skills around it, right? We have this fantastic course on Coursera called The Science of Wellbeing from Yale University. And we've seen the enrollments in that course rocket this year because people want to understand that in a stressful environment, how do I actively think about my well-being, my happiness, my resilience, and so on. But if you're unemployed, then the kind of stresses that you're going through are different. They're probably definitely higher, but the first focus that you have is to build the skills and get back into employment. And so I think it's essentially a function of that.
Yeah. So actually, there's a question very pointedly asked for you. So the question is, how do you see the online workplace learning evolve during the last few months, especially in the context of accelerated demand for tech skills?
I've been in this space for the last many years, and I think we've seen a significant change happen in the last 3, maybe 4 years or so. I think 3 years ago, I think a lot of approach was that there were many new roles coming up. We didn't clearly know how to help people skill up for those new roles. And so the approach was, throw things at the wall and hopefully something would stick, right? So give people a whole catalog of content and they'll figure out what to learn, and they'll learn it themselves. But I think, as Ruchira has spoken about and Rochna have spoken about as well, there's been a lot of good development. So today, the biggest impact that we see when we work with enterprises and companies is if we can take role-based skill development to them. If we can say you are a data-driven marketeer or you are a cloud architect, whatever the specific role might be, there is enough data to illustrate if you are at point A today and you want to get to point B, what is the path that you need to take from a learning and development standpoint. So I think there has been this whole shift to say, let's get role-based skill development to happen. Second, I've already spoken about this, and especially in today's world, right? Along with learning technology skills or functional skills, there is also a strong need for human or soft skills to be learned. And third, I would say, along with knowledge, if in a virtual environment we can provide practice, we can provide hands-on learning, we've seen a key element of that kicking in as well. And I will wrap it up by going back to, I think, what Rochna said as well, that in this whole transformation to the cloud, for example, people come first, right? And for learning and development leaders to have impact on the development of skills of their people can actually have business impact across the organization. So I think that's a kind of development that we've seen in this space overall.
That's a fair assessment. We have the next question coming up for Rochna. And Rochna, this question is a very basic question. I'm sure you get this a lot. So it's about where do I go to get started with Google Cloud Learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously one can go to cloud.google.com/training to get started. Coursera, Cloud Academy that they just pointed out, is a great place to get started on GCP training. The most important thing is, back to what Raghav was just saying about, is where you are and where you want to be, right? So a lot of users who come to us have been working on-prem worlds. So they are probably a system administrator or a developer doing on-prem work, and now they need to understand cloud. I call this the upskilling motion, right? So they kind of already understand it. They just don't understand this piece of technology and the new mindset required for that. Then there are people who kind of didn't touch technology much before because they didn't need to. And now this world of cloud has changed everything for them. And that's the digital transformation that they're going through. And I call that the whole reskilling engine, that is really required as well, where you knew something, you sort of have to forget some of the things you knew and then learn some new things to be on a path. So whether you're new to cloud, you already know a little bit of cloud, you already know some IT, we have these really great role-based learning paths which says, this is where I want to get started, this is what I want to be. And then the most important thing is that as human beings, we do need motivation and reward along the way. So we also have great like certifications and skill badges that people can achieve, so that they have something that they can put on their resume if they are looking to get employed, or as leaders to find ways to keep your employees engaged and motivated. Certifications can be a huge benefit to that too. So to get started, pick a destination and know where you are is basically what I'd say.
Excellent. There's another follow-up question for you. The gentleman wants to understand, can my engineers engage in hands-on learning?
Yeah, I think both Richard and Raghav talked about this. In Google Cloud, we have always, this has been a core tenet of learning for us from day one, right? Like, we always knew that nobody's going to be able to do anything in the cloud by just reading or watching. These are kinesthetic people. They need to do. Developers need to build. Cloud engineers need to build and like tinker with the actual product to do. So even the courses that we have put up on Coursera and all of our skill badges that I just talked about all fundamentally start with a hands-on labs, right? Like my team first thinks about what labs we should build and then add in conceptual videos and assessments and skills and whatever else after that. So we hands-on labs is the first thing. And again, if you engage in a course, Google Cloud course through Coursera, you're absolutely doing hands-on labs. And these are no simulations. These are no like made up scenarios. This is actual GCP project that gets provisioned for you. You get time to do the lab, instructions to do the lab, as much instructions as you need or as little as you need them, depending on your proficiency level. So yeah, I mean, our customers always told us that they want scars, meaning they want real people who've done projects and experimented with that. So we do challenge labs, which basically say we just give you a project and you got to go figure out how to do the things in that. And at the end of that, if they complete it successfully, they do get a digital badge along with it too. So hands-on learning has been a core element for how we do learning at Google Cloud.
I think that's probably the best way of assessing your skills, because unless you test it in the real world, you won't really know if it actually works or not.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, right? Like, again, you could, if you're learning how to cook, you can't just watch recipes and say, I know how to cook. And this is the same thing, just the cookbook is different, right? You're creating cloud apps versus some good food in the kitchen. So I think that that's exactly how I think about it, right? Like, you have to do it. You have to read about it, understand some new concepts. But the more you do, practice is a really important thing, even in cloud. And so, yeah, hands-on labs are a huge component. We also offer a very large series, over 500 different labs of just individual lab topics. So if you know cloud and you just don't know, let's say, BigQuery, or you're trying to do something in enhancing a machine learning model, we can just do a lab for that one topic. So we have 500 different topics and Google Cloud that we can offer as well. So lots of focus on that.
Excellent. Let's get to the next question. The question is, what data do we use to analyze the state of skills, and how can we benchmark against other companies within the same industry? Ruchira, would you like to take that?
Sure, and I'll take that. I think this was referencing to the first few graphs I, was talking about to track skills. Let me talk about how we do it at Coursera. So with the customers in Coursera, we have developed something called as the Coursera Skill Development Dashboard, where we allow them to really quantify the skills within the company. And the way that this was created is we got a lot of requests from our customers saying that we're able to quantify our revenues and our costs, but skills are this black box and we really don't know how skilled we are. And so we went around designing this, and the way that these are calculated is that every piece of content on Coursera is tagged to the skills it teaches, which is a one-to-many mapping. And then we measure the proficiency of that skill in the learners who are taking up that content and taking up the assessments. As we see how learners perform, we draw intelligence on the skill profile of the learners. We then go ahead and aggregate it at a team level, at a company level, at a industry level, at a region level. There are various different cuts and slices to it. There is a time series analysis that we can do. But I would say at the core of it all is that the skill graph of tying the performance of a learner with the skills that they learn and the proficiency that they learn at is really the backbone of being able to track it.
Thanks, Ruchira. There's a question.
If I can add to that on a lighter note, we are a little bit like the CBSE board of the world, Varun. We know how everybody's performing on their exams, and we can benchmark you given how you're performing compared to somebody else in the same industry, in a different industry, in the same country, in a different country. So it's a little bit simplistically like that, but Ruchira explained the complex version of how we do this benchmarking.
So let's not scare away the audience by talking about our board exams,
Scary memories of like board exams. I'm good with the Ruchira explanation.
Well, getting on to the next question, Raghav, maybe you want to take this. Which industries are seeing a greater engagement of cloud?
So I would say this is closely linked to those industries where disruption is happening, where there is larger propensity to move to the cloud. And so clearly there is a bigger, focus on skill development. If you look around us in India, financial services is digitizing rapidly, that's moving to the cloud. Even the industry that we play a role in, which is the education space. If you look at higher education in India, all of it has moved online. K-12 education has moved online. And there are, I believe, 40 million students in India across 1,000 universities. So a lot of that is migrating to the cloud as well. And we are seeing a lot of learning and development happening there as well. And then in today's world, with so much focus on pharma industry as well, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of digitization happening. And so we see quite a bit of learning and development in that industry as well. I think largely many industries which are moving to the cloud, we are seeing people coming and building cloud skills on the Coursera platform, coming and taking GCP content and building those skills, I would say.
Thanks. There's a follow-up question around the whole Coursera Cloud Academy. Ruchira, you talked about that. So the question is, how will Coursera Cloud Academy actually run alongside other programs that we as in the enterprises are running in their organization?
Understood. So I would say, Varun, that the Coursera Cloud Academy has been designed with the objective that it provides a starting point for an organization. So the idea is that the organization should be able to launch learning programs very quickly. But at the same time, these are not restrictive, which means that the organization, the customers have the opportunity to implement, to tweak whatever skill profiles they would need to. And so the way we work is that we amalgamate the existing learning programs with this new academy so that we can custom build a learning plan that is truly personalized to the company needs, and basically work together, integrating. So integrate what you have with what we propose and create something
So it's not a standard program. You can stitch it in a more customized way.
We do have customers who like to approach it from the standard lens. Again, I'll go a little bit technical here, but the way the program has been designed is again through a global benchmarking. So we've looked at, let's say when we talk about the skilling of data scientists, we've looked at the top 10, 20% of data scientists around the globe, and we've created a skill profile from them and benchmarked it. So there's already a lot of science that has gone behind creating the academy, and most of our customers are happy to implement it as is. However, if you already have a cloud program, skilling program running, those can be also integrated within the academy.
Excellent. The next question is for Google. Rochna, the question is, do you offer courses for business professionals as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked about how when you think about digital transformation, the entire organization has to move and not just IT. While the bulk of the training might happen for the developers and the IT practitioners, we definitely don't stop there. So we do have courses for business decision makers. We have, and sorted even for leaders, like how should you lead change when you're thinking about a cloud transformation, all the way to just program managers who need to understand all the fundamentals, and decision makers at all levels. We also break that down by different subject areas. So if they're into machine learning or want to understand a bit more before they can, one of the things that's also interesting is that in the past, a lot of technology learning happened after the buying decision. So you knew you were going to adopt a technology, you had bought the technology, and then you sort of learned about it. Well, that's no longer the case, right? The educated buyer is making the decision now. So you first have to learn, and then you go make the decision, oh yeah, this is actually going to help us drive something, and then you start using it. So absolutely, business decision makers and the entire organization that is not IT is equally important for us, and we do have learning paths for them.
Great, Rochna, there's a question specifically for you. You talked about certifications. The gentleman wants to understand if you could describe what kind of certification you're talking about and how does it actually work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Certifications are a very interesting thing in that people learn skills and then they need some sort of a validation. It's kind of like having your diploma or your degree after you've gone through 4 years of college. And I feel like I'm back into the CBSE board example, but it's not about that. You just have a degree now. And that piece of paper really matters, right? Because that's what like is getting asked in job descriptions, or that's what you put on your resume. And so certifications are essentially that. It's a way we validate skills, and then we give people a badge of honor that they can go ahead and demonstrate to their future employers or their current employers that they have the necessary skills to do the job, right? So it's a validation mechanism. We have over 9 different role-based certifications in cloud, everything from an architect to a data engineer to a security engineer, networking engineer, and our most recent machine learning engineer certification that we've launched as well. So depending on where you are in your journey, if you're just getting started, early stage, we'd recommend getting started with something called Google Certified Cloud Engineer. It's an associate level certification program that you obviously can complete the learning, get a lot of hands-on practice, which we highly recommend, and then you take an exam to do that. And Coursera has done a great job of actually creating all of those certificate pathways that allow you to prepare with hands-on learning to get there. Training is obviously not required to complete the certification, but we've seen that most people need the training in order to pass the exam.
Excellent.
And Varun, if I can add a quick point to that at a slightly wider level that we see on Coursera as well. And like Rochna said, I think learners appreciate the opportunity to get these certificates. Partly, it feels good if you've got a certificate for your efforts, but also it's a great signaling mechanism, right, to the industry, to your current employer, prospective employer, that you have these certificates. And on the Coursera platform, 75 million plus learners around the world, 10 million in India. On a professional platform like LinkedIn, Coursera certificates are the second largest in number around the world. And what that tells us is that people want to learn, and then they want to get a certificate and put it on your LinkedIn profile, on your CV, because that's a great signaling mechanism as well. And I think what Rochna spoke about in terms of the GCP certificates, we've seen strong resonance with that with learners on our platform as well.
Excellent. So that's motivation as well.
But yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just one other quick point. As an employer, this is a huge signal for you too, right? Like when you have somebody applying for a job, this can be a great filtering mechanism, if you will, right? Like if somebody is showing certification on their resume, employers should feel confident that they've gone through the testing, they've gone through the learning, and are now with that hands-on learning coming to your organization. So it's definitely a mutual benefit for the individuals, but also a huge, hopefully, efficiency mechanism for the employers that are hiring.
So that's excellent. Enough options for everyone to learn. With that, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, all our panelists. And I'm really glad and grateful to for our attendees for sharing such insightful questions that just helped us bring out a lot more value for you from this session. And with that, I would like to just remind you that in case you missed some part of the session, the recording of the session will be available within 24 hours. So do come back and rewatch as you like. And stay connected for more sessions and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.